They thought I'd take it because I had no choice. I was in the middle of refactoring some god-awful legacy code, stuff written before Git was even a thing, when the email hit. I remember it because I just commented, "What kind of sadist nests ternaries 4 levels deep?" When my Outlook pinged. The subject line, Complan Q4 Confidential. It was from Mitchell, the CEO, meant for HR, but someone must have fat-fingered a CC because it hit every inbox on the dev team. The whole office went silent. The message wasn't long, maybe 6 lines, but it lit the place on fire. Keep him at $14 per hour through Q4. He's got no leverage. Divorce, community college grad. His kids got medical stuff. Classic desperate dad syndrome. It was about me, Daniel Martinez, 33 years old, based in Scottsdale, Arizona. I'd rebuilt half of the damn client platform, was still rebuilding it, actually, and they were billing clients $250 an hour for my work. But to Mitchell, I was just a call center with a sob story. Jesus, someone muttered behind me. The CEO's door slammed shut 2 seconds later. A recall request hit our inboxes at the same time. Too late. I didn't blink, didn't even move. I just stared at my monitor while the screen started to blur. You ever have that moment where the world stops just long enough for you to realize exactly what you are to some people? That was mine. Cheap labor in a suit, a spreadsheet, a line item, an afterthought. No one said a word to me. Not the PMs, not the devs, not even Maya, who I share a whiteboard with and who once bought me coffee every day for a week when my kid was in a hospital. She looked at me with her mouth slightly open and didn't say a thing. I think they were waiting for me to explode, or cry, or storm into Mitchell's office and flip a chair. But I didn't do any of that. I just minimized the email, pushed my glasses up the bridge of my nose, and kept working. The bastard wasn't wrong. I was divorced. My kid did have medical issues. And yeah, I did need the job. But what he didn't know, I'd already started building something better. In secret, at night, after Diego went to bed, after the fear of not making rent started to morph into something else entirely. Determination. They thought I'd take it, because I had no choice. They were wrong. When I first started at Apex Digital Systems, I had nothing but a busted Honda, a backpack full of cables, and a 6-year-old son who couldn't sleep through the night without wheezing. Diego's asthma meds cost more than my rent, and I was still trying to adjust to the hollow quiet of post-divorce life. I was raw, broke, and barely hanging on. When Mitchell interviewed me, he looked me up and down like a used appliance. "We're taking a risk on you," he said, fingers steepled like he was a damn pope. $14 an hour. Review in 6 months. Prove yourself. I said thank you, not because it was generous. It wasn't, but because I needed it. I needed something. I had no savings, no family nearby, and no backup plan if this didn't work. So I said thank you, shook his hand, and tried not to flinch when he told me my workstation was just past the break room, next to the closet. The janitor closet, to be exact. My first desk wobbled if I leaned too hard on it. The monitor was yellowed around the edges, and the tower sounded like it was trying to take off. Booting up took 20 minutes. Outlook crashed every time I opened a file bigger than a JPEG. But I made it work. I stayed late the first night, and the next, I took home printed documentation, like it was bedtime reading. Apex had internal tools that hadn't been touched since 2011, most of them written in frameworks no sane dev would touch. Their APIs were half broken, their backend spaghetti, their documentation a war crime. But underneath all that mess, there was opportunity. I figured out where things were breaking. I patched endpoints nobody else dared open. One of their client dashboards kept crashing under load. I rebuilt the entire module over a weekend and pushed a fix Monday morning. 2 weeks later, one of the project managers pulled me aside. "Hey," he said, almost embarrassed. "Is it true you fixed the Carson dashboard?" "Yeah," I said. "Why?" He blinked. They've been complaining about that for like 3 years. Mitchell told them it couldn't be solved without a full rebuild. Huh. After that, my name started getting around. Clients began asking for me on calls. I had no fancy title, no management power, but they started looping me into strategy meetings like I was part of the leadership team. Mitchell even smiled at me once, real wide and fake as hell, and said, "You're becoming indispensable." That smile disappeared when I brought up the 6-month raise. We were sitting in his glass office. He had a Rolex on, big, gold loud, and he barely looked up from his phone when I asked. "Market conditions," he muttered, like it was a full sentence. "Let's revisit at the end of Q4. This was Q4. No raise. "Budgets are tight," he said, sipping from a coffee that probably cost more than my groceries. "You should be grateful we've kept you on full time." Grateful. That word stuck with me all the way back to my desk. Past the fresh out of college devs making twice my rate. Past a marketing guy who bragged about his quarterly bonus like it was a birthright. I was grateful, all right, grateful I'd already started building something better. Late at night, after Diego was asleep, I'd been tinkering with something on my old Frankenstein laptop, a back-end platform cleaner than anything Apex had. No duct tape, no legacy trash. Something sleek. Something that could replace their entire system with one install. I didn't even have a name for it yet, but the bones were there. And the more Mitchell shrugged me off, the more time I poured into it. I kept showing up early, kept staying late, but something in me had started to shift. I wasn't building their future anymore. I was building mine. I called it Forge. The name came to me around 2 a.m. while I was elbow deep in Node.js and cold coffee. Something about heat and pressure, creating something stronger, about taking raw materials and shaping them into something unbreakable. Forge sounded strong, clean, durable, exactly what I needed it to be. I started building at my kitchen table on a Frankenstein laptop. Part Dell, part salvage, all patched together like my life. The screen flickered if I nudged the power cord wrong, and the M key stuck. But it worked. That's all that mattered. The idea was simple. Client management software that didn't suck. Not the bloated legacy junk Apex sold to banks and insurance firms. Not the kind that required 3 weeks of onboarding and 5 IT guys to reset a password. Forge was meant to be fast, intuitive, flexible. Something real people could use without a manual or a hotline. By the end of month 3, I had login, user permissions, and secure client data fields working clean. It didn't look pretty yet, but the bones were solid. That's when Carlos got involved. Carlos was a designer I used to work with at a startup that died mid-pivot. He'd just been laid off, had a daughter a year younger than Diego, and was one of the few people I trusted enough to tell. We met up at a burger place halfway between our apartments, and I showed him the mock-ups on my busted laptop over soggy fries and milkshakes. "Dude," he said, eyes wide, "this makes Apex look like Windows 98 had a baby with a fax machine. I'm calling it Forge." He leaned back, nodded, "I'm in." And just like that, I wasn't alone anymore. We worked nights, after bedtime routines and dishwasher cycles, and bills paid just in time. Carlos sent Figma files at midnight. I pushed code at 2 a.m. We passed ideas back and forth over greasy takeout containers. Our kids asleep in the next room. And while Apex treated me like a disposable asset, I studied everything. Client contracts, pricing tiers, pain points, the way sales talked about feature sets they barely understood. I printed out invoices, read them like blueprints. I even checked my own contract, looking for landmines. They didn't even have a proper non-compete. It was buried in boilerplate HR language, just a generic NDA. No clause barring side work. No restrictions post-termination. I paid a lawyer $300 to double-check, and she looked up from the printout and said, "You're clear. Just don't use any of their code." I smiled. I didn't need their code. What I was building made their product look like a dinosaur trying to use a touchscreen. Meanwhile, Mitchell hired his idiot nephew, tech consultant. They called him $75 an hour. Kid showed up in Yeezys, posted selfies in the server room, and once asked if we could do the cloud in dark mode. I watched him crash a staging server trying to install a theme plugin on a backend API. I was still making $14, so I kept pretending. Nodded along in stand-ups, took tickets, fixed what I had to fix. But every night, I built Forge a little further, added features, tested edge cases, made sure every table scaled right on mobile. Then one day, I got pulled into a client call with Sterling Capital, Apex's biggest whale. Their project manager had questions, real ones, about security and user roles. Mitchell's nephew froze. We have, like, tiers? Silence. So I jumped in, walked him through how it could work. Clean, fast, permission-based. I even screen shared a dummy version I'd built for Forge, hiding the name. The Sterling rep raised an eyebrow. That's interesting. We don't have that now. No, I said, heart pounding. But we could. After the call, I stared at my screen and realized something. I wasn't hiding anymore. That was the shot. I just needed to take it. The whole thing was already circling the drain before I walked in. I was elbow deep in a bug. No one else could reproduce when an IM from Maya popped up on Slack. Mitchell's nephew is crashing the Sterling demo. Get in here. I didn't even respond. Just stood up, tucked my phone into my pocket, and walked toward the conference room like I wasn't about to put out a 5-alarm fire. Through the glass, I could already see the disaster. Frozen screen. Blank stares. Mitchell pacing like a caged animal while his nephew clicked around helplessly. The kid mumbled. Sometimes a load balancer just takes a second to catch up. Rebecca Stone sat stone-faced at the end of the table. CEO of Sterling Capital. $1 billion portfolio. Black suit, no expression, just watching, taking it all in. Mitchell spotted me and practically yanked me into the room. Daniel, can you just... He gestured at the screen. Fix this. I didn't answer him. I nodded at Rebecca, sat down in front of the laptop, and took over. The platform had timed out from an unresolved dependency in a circular API call loop. Sloppy. I killed the rogue thread, bypassed a faulty module, and ran a quick patch script I'd written a month ago and quietly kept in my personal stash. The system booted. Stable. Clean. I walked them through the dashboard in real time, pointing out key metrics, smart filters, and a quick view tool I'd built that was never even in the spec. Rebecca leaned forward slightly when I showed her that. This isn't part of your current platform, she said. It should be, I replied, by the time the demo ended. Mitchell was sweating through his collar, and his nephew looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. I stood up, ready to leave, when Rebecca held out a card. Not a generic business card, her personal one. Name, direct number, and a private Gmail address. I turned it over. Her cell number was handwritten on the back. She looked me straight in the eye. Call me. That night, after Diego was finally asleep, his inhaler tucked under the pillow like always, I stepped out onto the balcony, stared at the streetlights, and dialed. Rebecca answered on the first ring. Daniel Martinez, she said. Tell me your story. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told her the truth. About Apex. About Mitchell. About the closet desk and the missed raise. About the email, the one that said I had no leverage. She didn't interrupt. She just listened. And when I told her I was still making $14 an hour, the line went dead silent. 14, she said finally. They're billing us $250 for your time. I let out a quiet laugh. Yeah. More silence. Well, she said, that explains the disconnect. We didn't talk long after that. Just enough for her to say she understood, that she'd be in touch. 2 days later, Mitchell called me into his office. No smile this time. No small talk. He shut the door hard and didn't sit. Sterling Capital wants you, he said, as their sole point of contact. Effective immediately. I didn't flinch. Okay. He paced, fuming. You're not senior level. You're not even salaried. I met his stare. Doesn't sound like they care. That night, I opened a shared doc Title IV client migration plan. It was almost ready, and I already knew who our first customer would be. We signed the lease on the office above Mario's Pizzeria 2 weeks after the Sterling demo. It was small, 2 rooms, bad lighting, and the AC sounded like a jet engine, but it was ours. Carlos brought a mini fridge. I brought a coffee maker. We set up desks scavenged off Craigslist, and I slapped a cheap vinyl sign on the glass door. Forge Systems, LLC, soon to be removed from the building directory. According to Mario, we were still in beta, still patching little quirks and edge case bugs. But it worked. It really worked. Fast, stable, and simple to use. And once Rebecca signed a verbal agreement for Sterling Capital to migrate, I knew we were past the point of no return. I brought on 2 more devs, old friends from a contract job years ago. One had just been laid off. The other was sick of chasing invoices from flaky startups. They signed on immediately, working freelance until we could pay full time. At night, I ran performance tests until my eyes blurred. In the morning, I dropped Diego off at school like nothing had changed. But something had. Every morning that I walked into Apex felt more and more like walking into a place I had already left. The day Forge passed its final round of internal testing, I printed out my resignation letter at my kitchen table. No emotion, just 2 lines. Effective immediately, I resigned from Apex Digital Systems. Daniel Martinez. I put it in my backpack and went into work like it was any other Wednesday. Mitchell was in his office, barking at someone on Zoom about quarterly projections. I waited, let the moment stretch. Then I knocked and stepped inside. He didn't even look up. "Let me guess," he said, waving his hand. "They poached you." Sterling made an offer. I didn't smile. I just set the envelope on his desk. "It's kind of cool," he said. I laughed. "Just kind of..." He grinned. "Okay, fine. Really cool." And just like that, I realized something. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about Mitchell or Apex or the years I spent trying to prove I was worth more than a spreadsheet entry. He was gone, forgotten, replaced by something stronger. Something that couldn't be erased with a memo or a locked account. Forge was proof that you can start with nothing but an old laptop and a reason. The truth is, Mitchell made one mistake that changed everything. He thought I wouldn't fight back. He saw a desperate dad with a sick kid and assumed I'd keep my head down forever. What he didn't see was what that desperation could become when its focus channeled and sharpened. When the world tells you you're replaceable, you build something they can't replicate. Not just a product, a company, a mission, a future. Sometimes the best revenge isn't a court ruling or a headline. Sometimes it's a working product delivered on time, under budget, and better than they ever thought possible. Sometimes it's watching your kid walk through the office you built from nothing, and knowing he'll never have to wonder if you fought hard enough. Because you did.